You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Fezcast. And joining me tonight, it's Sam, new Sam. He's probably racked up more hits than old Sam already, but you know, there we go. Just get out of Sam Norris digging early doors. And also joining us is Matt. And I mean, Matt, this must be 3 times in a month, isn't it?
Probably not quite, to be fair. Sam's definitely racked up more appearances this season than I have, but yeah, good to be back in.
He's obviously doing something right because you're back again, Sam. I take it you were down in the sun on the weekend. Were you in North London?
I was, yes, yeah. It's this time of year, it's the East Stand tan, isn't it? So yeah, it was glorious, and yeah, I actually was smart enough to put a pair of shorts on. So yeah, very nice.
Glad I wasn't there now, Matt. Well, I suppose you were in your shorts as well, were you?
To be honest, I got the forecast and the dress code a bit wrong. I was a little bit too warm in a pair of jeans, but I fortunately sit in the South Stand, which is good for me because I get moonburn. So, yeah, East Stand's not for me.
Shall we get into the show and then start with a bit of a reaction to last week's show? Because we ended up with me interviewing Rhys Carey, so we never got opportunity last week to do a reaction to it. But first of all, from my point of view, what an absolutely lovely guy Rhys is. For a 23-stone prop forward, he's very quietly, softly spoken. Absolutely lovely guy, and I think that did come over in the interview, didn't it, Sam?
It really did. What strikes me is he's very humble. I mean, I don't think he enjoys the spotlight or the focus on himself. But no, he seems a very, very nice gent, a nice guy.
I would suggest, though, Matt, that you don't introduce yourself after I dropped you in it about the sugar puffs question. And to find out that he only has a piece of toast for breakfast is quite amazing, really.
That's the biggest surprise of the lot, yeah.
I did see what they get laid on at lunchtime when I was down at the Old Albanians, and to be fair, they're fed pretty well at the the club. And also, I did want to mention as well that, and I'm hoping I'm not sharing too many confidentialities here or anything like that, but as I was doing my downloads and sending it off to Duncan for him to get into the show, I was sat down with Rosie Shegan and Theo Dan, and Theo was talking about how old he felt, which I kind of like nullified by pointing out that he was born on the day I made my debut for the veterans at my club, which kind of like shut that bit up a bit. And then Nick Tompkins, Ben Earl, and the leader of the sushi gang, Jamie George, came along and sat down. And there's a couple of things that come out of that. First of all, Nick Tompkins, sacrosanct. Nobody can criticise Nick Tompkins ever again. I don't care if he turns up, misses 17 tackles, and plays like he's on one leg, like Stephen Hawkins would be better in the centre than he would be. What a lovely guy. And he took the time to say to me, I was wearing obviously my Fezcast t-shirt, thank you for what we do on the Fezcast, which is a huge, huge thing. And I mean, I don't know whether they listen to or anything like that. I know when I asked Owen Farrell to sign the article that I'd taken out paper and said, have you read? He went, no. And I thought, oh, well, fair enough. But then as I got up to go, Matt, what was quite interesting was I said to the boys, I said, look, in view of the Sale game, I said, thank you for that performance. You put a smile on everybody's faces. And I said, you know, going forward, that's just what we hope as fans to see. And Ben Earl turned around and said, we owe you that performance, which is, I think, a huge statement for them to make. I think they understand perhaps some of our frustrations this year. And where we've said there's maybe a disconnect, that connection's been made again, Matt.
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, they don't have to be listening to us to know that the fans aren't happy. They'll have heard it in so many ways. I mean, I can imagine, Owen Farrell not reading an article. I'd imagine he hasn't read a newspaper since about 2023, given everything that he's had to put up with. But yeah, the acknowledgement from some of the players that hasn't been right. There's been times this season where I think maybe it's felt a little bit insular. Potentially, we're not hearing from the players as much as maybe we'd want to. And sometimes there's a very good reason for that. But yeah, the fact that you've managed to get a few words with a few people and just confirm what we do know about them. They are a genuine bunch, and they are trying hard to give us the performances that we want to see. Credit to the club for giving you a bit of access there and for us to be able to report on it.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks to Warwick for that, and also Danny at the club, who was there on hand to look after, make sure everything got sorted and done. And I will say, Dan Vickers tried to drop Reece Carey in about about one of his collections, which Reece said, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want my flat robbed. I think, well, if anybody's going to try and rob Reece Carey's flat, son, they're a braver man than me.
Good luck to them, yeah. I wouldn't fancy it, so yeah, all the best.
Whilst we're talking about the club off fields, I just wanted to pick up on something that came out in the news this week. And bearing in mind that as my parents and my wife and my bank manager will tell you, I'm the last person to comment on anybody's financial ineptitudes or whatever it may be. But Saracens come out this week and have been quite open in talking about the fact they made huge losses again, 9 million quid or thereabouts, which is an absolute massive amount, which we assume that's being covered by our benefactor, Dominic Sylvester. A lot of criticism coming the league's way because of the disjointed way. And I mean, last weekend, or the game against Tigers, was the first home match we played since about 2023, wasn't it, Matt? Or something daft like that. It certainly seems that way, doesn't it? Obviously, there's a problem financially, and it's not being helped by the way that the league is structured.
First home league game since the back end of January, which, yeah, it's no good for club coffers, it's no good for momentum, it's no good for anything. But, you know, that said, a few years back, we were complaining about league games going on in the Six Nations and us not seeing our full-strength team in every league match. So at the moment, with the rugby calendar the way it is, you can't have it both ways. I don't really know what the answer is to that. The answer is probably playing the Six Nations at a different time of year, which no one wants either. So that side of things, not really sure what we can do. But yeah, it's a big amount of money to be losing year on year. And having seen bits from other clubs, we're not the only ones. It's not even the biggest loss out of any club. I think Exeter have got that trophy at the moment. Rugby's not a money-making thing, and that's not going to change overnight. So it is, it's a big concern all round. But I'm like you, Jez, I'm not financially minded necessarily, so I don't know that I've got all the answers. I did note in a couple of the articles that have come out about it that some of the stadium operations financially is separate from Saracens itself. Whether that would be in the picture or not and what that would do to those losses, I don't know. But it's not a good look, is it, when you're losing that amount of money? You're losing more money than the salaries of the players, for a start. It's not great.
If you look back to Wasps and how much money they were in hock too, you're right, it's not all about the players. But I suppose it does open up the other question, Sam, that if you've got a rich sugar daddy benefactor type person coming in who's going to cover off £9 million of debt a year, but has got disposable income coming out of his backside that he doesn't know what to do with, a la Nigel Ray in previous years, a la other owners in previous years as well. And I'm sure James Dyson doesn't have to scrabble down the back of the sofa to find 50 pence to put in the meter. And this is my inner capitalist coming out. If that person is spending 9 million quid covering off debts, and he's got 15 million quid that he could spend if he wanted to every year on players' wages and such like, well, why shouldn't he? Because he's spending an awful lot of money to try and get some success, because at the end of the day, that's what they want. It would be very detrimental to the likes of Nottingham or Doncaster or whatever, who haven't got a sugar daddy. But, I mean, that's the nature of sport. Sport is inherently unfair, isn't it?
There's going to come a stage, though, where I'm sure these losses are going to stack, and I'm sure he's paying a financial advisor a hell of a lot more money than I'm on for my job to say, hang on a moment, this isn't quite adding up. The guys that are in it at that level, they're in it for the love of the sport and the love of the team. And we're lucky that there's someone there to pick it up. I think it was 91 days was our last Premier game at the StoneX. We've got a bit of momentum now. And guess what? We're stopping again for the Champions Cup. I don't think you move the Six Nations. I think you move that European competition and you put that at the back end of the season, because I think that would benefit that competition rather than stop, start, stop, start.
It doesn't make a huge amount of sense. I'll come back to that unfairness thing. nobody turned around to Sebastian Sawe on Sunday and said, you got to run the marathon with a fridge on your back like the bloke who come last, you probably would have still run it in 2 hours 10, no matter.
What are you on about sometimes, yes?
Did you not watch the London Marathon? The bloke ran it in 1 hour 59:30.
I did see that, yes. Yeah, but I mean, on Sam's point, I think it's worth saying that I totally agree with Sam there. I like the fact that the Prem Cup is played in the international windows. I think that does make an awful lot of sense, because otherwise you just lose weeks for your bigger competitions. But yeah, blocking the Premiership and the European competition separately, it creates two different stories within a season. What you do with sort of the knockout rounds for the Premiership, if you have knockout rounds for the Premiership, not sure. Still like the fact that a showpiece final at Twickenham is the last thing that happens. There's a lot of logic to separate out your competitions like that.
The other way of looking at it is that you play the European games at the very start, or the Champions Cup games at the very start of the season before the autumn internationals. And then you play our season after the autumn internationals, either side of the Six Nations. Potentially that could work.
We need to earn some money, don't we?
We keep saying, you can contact us, PWR, EPCR, RFU, at Fezcast, at our various social medias. I mean, we're very cheap. We're not going to cost you £9 million to come on. I mean, to be fair, a debenture at Twickenham will probably do me.
Yeah, if someone just wants to pay for my season ticket, that'll do, really.
For cheap dates.
cheap dates.
Oh, speak for yourself.
Let's take a break there, and then we'll come back and do a quick discussion about the Women's Six Nations.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And yeah, let's do a quick bit about the Women's Six Nations, because I feel a bit bad for the Women's Six Nations, because at the moment we've lots to talk about the Saracens men. Women's Six Nations going a bit on the back burner, but it's been a pretty good tournament so far, other than the fact that nobody seems to be able to get particularly close to England. I mean, Wales got closer than they did last time, Matt, but it's a small improvement, isn't it?
It's going to be an ongoing problem for the Six Nations for a little while. That it's not England's fault that we've put resources into professional players, and that shows in the standard we've got. Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, they do have some paid players, but you can see particularly when players come off the bench, and it's no disrespect to any of them that do, you can see some of the players that aren't necessarily able to train full time, play full time, just because the conditioning isn't there. And it makes for a less exciting tournament when games are so one-sided, but not a lot we can do. But yes, England's performance, clinical. It's not really any other way of putting it. It was just what England needed to do. It's the start of a 4-year process for another World Cup, I think, and that's all there really is to that.
Watching the build-up to the game, where obviously the key player there was Meg Jones. She's qualified for Wales, she's qualified for England, and she chose England because she's one of the best players in the world, and she wanted to be seen on the biggest stage. And Syrian Lillycrap was bemoaning the fact that I think there's a lot of people in Wales who feel that Meg Jones was poached. And Maggie Alfonsi was very quick to knock her down on that one, and quite rightly, and say, well, that's not England's fault. England's RFU did something right, which is something that we don't often say. And they invested in the women's 15s game in this country. Because of that, they've attracted the players who are dual qualified to plump for that one side. If you're good enough to play at the very top level, you're going to play for England. That's no disrespect to Wales, who, let's be honest about it, have picked their players who aren't necessarily Welsh. I mean, there's a couple of surnames in there that obviously are from people who've come over from the South Sea Islands and have been born here, but their parents, because their father played rugby for whoever, in the same way as Maddie Fiornati has for England. Her dad was a South Sea Islander, of a great player as well. It's not really that much of an issue, I don't think, Sam. And if Wales and Scotland want to keep those players, they've got to invest, haven't they?
England are so out in front because of that investment. But in a few years' time, you just think that it's going to push the game on. It's only going to better the game in the long run. But unfortunately, it's not competitive, and that's not England's fault. The England-France game, there's going to be a game there and a tussle.
It says a lot, really, doesn't it? That I think it's the last 3 or 4 years, they have deliberately made the England-France game the last match of the Women's Six Nations, because it's almost a foregone conclusion that that's going to be the title decider, just to create some kind of jeopardy to the tournament.
Let's talk about players, in particular Saracens players. She's running around like she's 15 years old again. Marley Packer has found a second wind, an Indian summer, whatever it may be. She was absolutely phenomenal on the weekend. She made turnovers. She made yards in space. She was creating gaps, you name it, and she got a couple of tries that take her and Jess Breach, who also got another try, closer to that all-time scoring record. Just phenomenal.
And it applies both at international and at club level. We've spoken to Marley on the show here before, and a lot of it is it's her own battle. She's basically proving that she's still got something to offer at that level, while also understanding that there are younger players coming through who have been professional for longer, that eventually they are going to get past her. But she's just looking at it as, when I have the opportunity to show what I can do, I'm going to prove that I've still got it at this level. And she does that every time she pulls on either an England shirt or a Saracen shirt. No two ways about it.
If you're Maddie Fiornati, who's she's an established player now, or the short from Bristol who's making a debut, Luatui who's making a debut, or very early on in their careers, you can only learn from someone of the quality of Marley Packer, can't you, Sam?
You can't help but learn, can you? It's the consistency as well, and she's playing without fear, isn't she? Which I'm sure we'll come on to in a little while as well with regards to men. It's just go out there and enjoy yourself and play your game, and lo and behold, good things happen when that pressure's taken away.
We talk about our bench being really, really strong, but actually coming off the bench at 9 is Flo Robinson now. Federaris was fit, would probably not be even in the squad, potentially, but she wouldn't perhaps be the first choice. Mo Hunt's got injured. Lucy Packer's taken up an awful lot of that heavy lifting there. But Flo's come on, and she's playing behind a dominant pack, and you don't tell the difference, do you?
No. And a lot of this comes down to the PWR. Our domestic tournament is actually a higher standard than a lot of international rugby. England will have easier games sometimes than your average PWR fixture. So Flo Robinson's playing alongside a host of international players and against international players, and has probably got the step up playing for England against Wales actually isn't, other than potentially the size of the crowd, actually isn't all that much. So that's benefit for it. But you're right, some of the younger, less experienced players coming through, it's still going to be very, very daunting. And she's obviously part of that squad with the likes of Mo Hunt around. And, John Mitchell we've just won a World Cup. We're looking 4 years ahead at the next World Cup. He could have just dispensed with every player that's not going to make that World Cup. Marley Packer, presumably being one of them in 4 years' time. Mo Hunt, maybe the same as well, and could have just gone, right, we've got to get all these in. But having those experienced players around, hugely beneficial to the younger ones coming through. And it's, probably shown in Flo coming off the bench and just hitting the ground running.
Another experienced player, Sam, as well, and we mentioned her last week because she was absolutely superb. Can't work out why she isn't being started every week, other than the fact, as you say, you want to give Holly Aitchison, Helena Rowlands opportunities. But, Zoe Harrison comes on and continues kicking at the posts. She hasn't missed since Noah was a boy, has she? I might have put the curse on her there, but, she just dead-eye dick every time she puts the ball on the tee. All-round player. And, actually, I think what tends to happen, Holly Aitchison moves to inside centre and looks 10 times a player inside centre outside Zoe, because Zoe gives you the control that you can work off of. or Helena Rowlands does, or whoever. I mean, I think that Zoe Harrison potentially at the moment is playing at a level that would make her World Rugby Player of the Year for the women, and yet she's not getting picked to start these games, although undoubtedly I think she'll be picked to start against France.
Undoubtedly. We had the conversation last week, didn't we, about she wasn't getting any love, if you like, and attention from a certain media outlet out there. But I listened to said podcast this week, and they actually gave her kicking is actually better than most of the men in this day and age. She's automatic. She will be there. Come the France game, if she's not starting, I'll be very surprised.
I'm sure Katie Daly McLean listens to our Festcast because she obviously reacted to Loxie calling her out because she was blowing bubbles up Zoe's bottom all afternoon when she came on, wasn't she, Matt?
She was, yeah, I did notice that, actually.
I mean, Katie, if you are listening in and you want to come on and explain yourself or have a right of answer to Loxie, you're more than welcome to come on.
Yeah, open door, isn't it? Like Sam, I think the selection is with a bigger picture in mind most of the time. You'll see as close to the John Mitchell's what he thinks is his strongest 15 against France. But I think a lot of the time he's picking players based on the opposition that's in front of us and their strengths. You do see that sometimes. The one thing that Holly Aitchison has at 10 ahead of Zoe is if you're on the front foot all the time and you just want to play running ball, then Holly Aitchison is potentially marginally ahead of Zoe. But it's just that one factor of the game where she's maybe just got that little bit of extra pace and more flair in taking the ball to the line. And that's it. If you need to control a game, if you have to do any defensive work whatsoever, you pick Zoe.
Quick word about Wales, who I think have improved. I mean, despite the score being as big as it was, they did get on the right side of the referee, shall we say. There was a point where England's discipline was questionable, although they did sort it out, although I think that was a lot to do with the referee maybe evening up the game a little bit. I don't know, but there was a couple of jackals that Marley and Meg Jones in particular got that were not rewarded, which, is one of those things. But Donna and Georgia came on and made a big difference as well. And I did want to mention Georgia because I can't remember whether it was in the Times or the Telegraph. It was one of the broadsheet papers where she's done an interview and talking about how she's really had to struggle, particularly with the affliction of psoriasis. I mean, how brave one she is to do what she does, suffering with how she does with that awful affliction. But then also, she's always has been, she's someone who stands up and is counted. She'll stick her head above the parapet. And if it means something, she gets on there and she talks about it, Sam.
She really does. Just cracks on with it.
You would never know that she had perhaps those issues with self-confidence. I mean, she's always been very forthcoming to us whenever we've spoken to her, very open and honest, but also engaging. To read that article was quite an eye-opener, wasn't it?
It was a little bit, yeah. I mean, she certainly wears her heart on her sleeve a little bit. So you do see the sort of the kind of highs and lows that she has in and out of rugby. And these sorts of personal stories are actually what keeps rugby relatable, in my view. At the end of the day, you do have to remember, particularly in the women's game where there's not mega bucks floating around. They are just normal people dealing with normal people, aren't they? So it's fair enough. But I mean, just on Wales themselves, it showed that there are some very strong players in that side, and it's a well-known problem already. There are plenty of Welsh players littered around the PWR playing for various clubs. We've obviously got a few of them ourselves, but they're not getting regular game time. They're in the squads because they deserve to be in the squads, but they quite often bench players third choice or whatever. And that's the major issue for Wales and probably Scotland to a lesser extent as well. So the argument that the PWR League benefits from a team based in Cardiff, for example, I know plenty of English flag painters would say that's an absolute travesty to bring in another nation's team into our league. But I think it only benefits the league, international rugby, women's rugby as a whole in the long run. So bring it.
You know my thoughts on the men's game about having 3 leagues of 10 teams from Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England. So I'm not one of those turkeys and I'll quite happily vote for Christmas. There we go. Just quickly, Ireland did pretty well, I thought, against France. I mean, France are a good side, but Ireland's clearly taking steps forward, as are Italy, who had the performance of the week, really, in putting to the sword the team that's gone backwards at a rate of knots, Matt, and that's Scotland, and that's worrying to see. Whether it's because it's a new coach who's trying to embed new ideas and everything, but this is a team that came very close to going to serious later stages in the last World Cup, and now they're getting beat by 40 points by Italy, who are, in the women's game, not the best team.
I mean, that World Cup performance was so much down to just the determination of the players, the mess they made of contracts and players' mental health and the bigger picture there. That's why they've gone backwards now, because they're just recovering from the mess that they made at the top, really. And that's basically what happened to Ireland a few years ago as well. So you see that happen. But yeah, Scotland really were poor. But yeah, credit to Italy in that game, because we kind of forget about Italy as a rugby nation sometimes, especially obviously in the women's game, where they're even later into the Six Nations than Italy were in the men's setup. But yeah, it was a really good performance from them.
That's Women's Six Nations for this week done. Let's take a break there, and then we'll come back and talk about going on a tiger hunt.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to our last part of the Fezcast for this week. And let's go straight into the three-word review, shall we? SSA starts it off with back-to-back. And yeah, we went back-to-back. 2 wins on the trot, and I can't remember the last time that happened. A little bit of consistency there is great, but we had as many three-word reviews about the merry whistleblower as we did about the game. And Mr. Dixon has come in for a little bit of, how do we put it, friendly banter, shall we say. I mean, Gareth Baxter, league's worst ref. Fine wines, won despite Dixon. Ollie Monksfield, Dixon was dreadful. And then Jay Knox C. Quinn's influence fails, and he prefaced that by saying, directed obviously at Sir in the middle, my least favourite ref. And Dixon isn't a great ref, is he? He'll have the odd good game. But for a lad who used to play the game, he shows a complete and utter lack of empathy, I feel, to the players and the game. And he's won. I think Carl Dixon's biggest problem is he's got the old Nigel Owens kind of like disease of thinking he's the star. And once you think you're the star and you start blowing your whistle for everything, it kind of goes wrong, doesn't it, Matt?
Yeah, Nigel Owens was kind of good enough to get away with it most of the time, was he? I mean, from years of doing this show, I tend to defend a referee.
Yeah.
I get bored with the sort of weekly "we lost because of the ref" chat that we quite often have on our show and various other shows. But to me, it was quite refreshing, and it was quite telling that actually after the match, there was almost a sort of general handshake going around between Saracens fans and Leicester fans, both agreeing that the referee was equally crap for both sides. I don't understand some of the decision making. I mean, he was missing knock-ons all the time. Thank God for the TMO, basically. Saved him on a number of occasions. I happened to sit in a seat directly opposite where Eroni Moe scored his try. And I had my eyes shut facing the other way at the time, and I could still see that he got the ball down. So I'm glad the TMO got involved in that. And yeah, I don't get it. I really don't get what that performance from Dixon was about, to be honest. But thankfully, it was a quite even game between the two teams. Although we're going to sit and whinge about a lot of the decisions, I think he was pretty poor equally. And so neither team really has a huge complaint to have about the referee affecting the result.
I think you're absolutely right there, Matt. And I mean, actually watching the game, I wasn't as irate as I would be. If he was refereeing us against Quins, as Jay pointed out, then I would be absolutely spared because Quins would have got, everything they wanted. And you watched him get the game at the end of May now I said that. But, I mean, the interesting thing was, Sam, that he had a right pop at Mangalatoji, didn't he, about players shouting at him. And I have a certain amount of sympathy with Carl in this situation that we have been bad at in the past. A little bit of that's come back. There shouldn't be dissent to the referees. There shouldn't be answering back to the referees. But why is it always Carl Dixon who has to have a word with captains to tell players to stop chirping at him? he's got to have a little bit of a look at himself and work out, it's that Venn diagram, isn't it? Players chirp at referees and Carl Dixon, one's red, one's blue, and it's a purple circle, isn't it? It's Carl Dixon get from players because he's...
I tell you who's chirping a lot as well was Jamie George.
Yeah.
Within that first 10, 15 minutes where I was sat, geez, I mean, I don't know what it is with him. I mean, that particular one knock on, I'm sure we're all aware of it in the ground. Everyone saw it apart from Carl Dixon. And luckily, like you say, the TMO pulled him up on it and it got pulled back. It beggars belief. It really does.
It's that bad that I watched the Gloucester Exeter game where Matt Carley saw a try scored that nobody else in the world saw scored, and watched Ethan Roots punch a player on the floor and still went, "Oh, TMO, can you have a look at that? Because I'm not sure." And he wasn't the worst referee on the weekend, Matt.
Unfortunately, I missed that one. I mean, I think being a referee is probably the hardest job in rugby. It's not an easy thing to do. The law book is about 4,000 pages long. If we're going to sit and talk about penalties at scrum time and penalties at ruck time, I'm just going to sit here and go, well, it's a complete lottery and we're all one-eyed about it and we think it's wrong. But it's just the fact that whether you were in the ground or watching on the telly, just seemed so obvious to everyone except him. And you could see that he was getting a shout in the ear from a touch judge or from the TMO on multiple occasions. He's had a bad day. If a player has a bad day, they get dropped. Carl Dixon should be reffing in the Championship for a couple of weeks just to see whether that helps to pick him up a little bit. If he gains some more confidence refereeing and comes back and is a good referee, then fair play. But yeah, that sort of performance doesn't or shouldn't get rewarded with refereeing another game next week. So we'll see.
The ironic thing about him complaining about players chirping is I remember him as a player and he was one of the chirpiest bloody... Well, he was a scrum half, wasn't he? He spent more time gobbing off in games. I mean, I think the right reaction to him is the one we saw from Owen Farrell late on the game. And you guys perhaps haven't picked it up yet on the TV replays, but I think it's on about 70 minutes and it might have been something had happened. The camera just panned to Owen Farrell and Owen Farrell was giggling. Shaking his head and giggling. You just sort of sat there thinking, yeah, that's it, isn't it? They got to that point where there's no point talking to him because he's not going to change his mind. It was laughable. I mean, there you go. Look, let's move away from Mr. Dixon. Carl, you can turn your Fezcast back on now. You can listen in. Because let's do talk about the performance and let's perhaps talk about the match first of all. And back to Gareth Baxter again, who not only did he say it was League's West referee, but Carl probably did actually add to this because it was a proper rugby match. Roger King said, ground it out. Ollie, again, amongst Hild, he said Wolfpack's back. I've changed it to Wolfpack is back because I think Wolfpack is one word, so I'm going to let Owen you that one. Josh Miller, vintage Saracens performance, and Kazi Sari, she said, Tigers hunted down. And I think that's pretty much it, isn't it? I mean, we were all hoping for a 5-point win because that makes things a little bit easier in the build-up towards potential playoff positions, and there is a couple of free words comes in about one was it's the hope that kills, isn't it? And and is it on? I mean, look, I think a 5-point win would have made a huge difference. It probably would have helped if Gloucester had stopped Chiefs from scoring a bonus point, but we're playing Tigers. We haven't beaten a team other than Bristol above us this season, so to beat Leicester was job done, number one, Matt. And we did do that job. Hank Key said, broke the spell and skin of teeth. And it was very much that. Helped us through a dogged, old-style, dare I say, Saracens performance.
Several times this season, we lost that game. Real sort of tooth and nail fights. And we'd have come out on the wrong side of it. We'd have conceded late on and gone home disappointed. And yeah, it was just nice to see. In spells, we played really, really well. On another day, we might have put 30, 40 points on them if ball had gone to hand late on. But there were times when we were that good. There were elements of the game that were a bit poor. And we still came out on top. And yeah, I'm going to sound all negative now, really. But to me, it's like all the team selection, the coaching staff, the style of play. They've finally, in April, they've seen what we saw in January and have finally acted on it.
I'm going to big up Leicester Tigers here because I think, Jeff Parlin's done a really good job with them this season.
Oh, yeah.
As a new coach coming in and giving them a bit of identity back that perhaps they've missed previously. And, since the likes of Ben Youngs, Dan Cole have all retired. You asked a question before we started recording, Sam, about how well George Martin played. And George came on, and say this is a future Saracens player. He came on 50 minutes. It wasn't really visible, but I think that was because a lot of players on both sides rolled up their sleeves and defences were sublime in that period of time. And even when little breaks were made, there was the one where Owen Farrell had gone through the gap, done the double pump, and then put it into Ben Earl, and Ben just dropped it because he was under pressure. We were doing the same to Leicester. At that moment, when Leicester looked like they might have broken through, we put enough pressure on. Nick Tompkins again, I'm going to big up Nick, my new best mate. He was making some hits. He was getting some turnovers at crucial times, and it was defences that were on top. For the rugby purists, that's as beautiful as seeing 18 tries being scored, isn't it?
It was really roll your sleeves up, and it was a little bit old school. I thought we were value for the win. We did some very nice things. We got in each other's way. We did some silly things. We did our best to kind of try and throw it away the last 5 or 10 minutes with Sinty getting the yellow and stuff like that. And Max probably having his one downfall when he should have just gone to ground with it and he tried to do something clever that last 10 minutes. Our heads almost went, but we won that game and we deserved to win that. In my eyes, we deserved to win it because we did more good than bad. And that Leicester Tigers side is a really good side. The lad, Hammer Webb or something, I didn't even know he was playing half the time. Radwan, he came off the bench. I thought that was going to give us fits, and we actually kept him under wraps because even when he played for Newcastle, you could always bet your bottom dollar that he was going to score against us, and we knuckled down, and we took care of business.
Chris Braganza in his 3-word review sums it up quite neatly, I think, and he said pace, which was definitely the first half, heart, definitely the second half, and sunshine, as Liam Gallagher would say. That was pretty apt. I will hand over now, though, to Ted Zier, who I think has come up with the 2 3-word reviews of the week. And his first 3-word review was Bracken, Burke, Hartley, which does sound like a firm of undertakers. They were exceptional. And he says his second 3-word review is, that is all. We have found, provided they stay fit, and obviously Charlie Bracken's going to be alternating next season with another superb scrum half in Thomas Williams. But Thomas Williams is 31, 32 now, so I mean, how many years has he got at the top? That's a 9, 10, 12 partnership for a very good, decent future, provided they can all stay fit. And I mean, Ollie Hartley's try, special winner. I mean, I think he went round the hot dog salesman 3 times, didn't he? Broke his ankles.
Yeah, again, watching it from straight down the line was fantastic. Yeah, I think my ankles hurt watching him go around a few people. But Ollie Hart been crying out for Ollie Hartley to play a bit more rugby. I know he's had his injury problems over the last couple of years, but he had probably the game of his life against Toulouse, and then we didn't see him. And he played the Prem Cup and didn't feature in the showdown, and we were rubbish. I mean, he's obviously had the game against Sale and this one now. Hopefully, he's now got his opportunity and it's going to stick. I think what we have seen as well is that Nick Tompkins is twice the player at 13 than he is in the 12 shirt. I hope that's nice enough. It's a bit of a criticism. Nice. There just seems to be a bit of a better balance to that. And my big concern, although yes, we saw the game out, I didn't see a huge amount come off the bench that sort of elevated how we played, which is a problem, other than Nathan Mitchellow coming on, who I think basically between Ben Earl and Nathan Mitchellow, you get one Tom Willis. And you could see that that's basically what they were trying to do. Ben Earl was taking on the carrying, Mitchellow was taking on the tackling and the pace side of things. He was very, very good coming on. But yeah, everything else was a bit kind of going through the motions. And I always have a bit of why does everyone have to come off the bench? Why do people have to have 1 minute off the bench just to get them an extra appearance? I don't get it. Anyway, sorry, that's a bit of a side note.
I suppose the only thing is that was a very hot day.
Yeah.
And it's the very first proper hot day that they played in this calendar year. So I could imagine. I know the previous week we talked about when Loxie had pointed out that when Charlie Brackett came off, that he was breathing through his arse, and the effort that he puts in, you can imagine why on 75 minutes it's worthwhile bringing on an old head. And I will give some credit here to the old heads, because I think bringing those old heads on for that last 10 minutes, Owen Farrell just sorting out a couple of kinks in defence that might have gone wrong. Ivan Van Zyl, okay, he's not going to give you that quick ball, but he was solid enough in a defensive act. He added to that side of it. Even Lucas Inti, I know he got yellow carded, but he put in a couple of decent stops on his man. So, I can see where they're coming from. I think Owen, when he came on at 10, outside Charlie, looked twice the player because he was getting ball that allowed his speed of thought to put him in better positions than perhaps a 34-year-old player would get if it's slow ball. I'll play a bit of devil's advocate there, and I don't see the problem so much there. Also, it was wonderful to see. You do need a senior player, a pivot player, maybe a slower player, which perhaps Nick Tompkins at 13 offers you, or if it was Alex Lozowski would offer you, or if it's Owen Farrell playing at 12. But you've got to have quick players around him. You can't have Farrell and Tompkins or Tompkins and Lozowski. You've got to have young, quick players around them and for that system to properly work.
Hartley at 12 and Tompkins at 13 is the perfect mix. That move, I don't know another 12 at the club that could do that at the moment as a senior player. It's only him. What you're asking Owen to do now is perfect. It's dangerous to defend a lead sometimes and you're playing that aggressive, but that's the perfect position for him now, and that's the spot. We're almost there. It's just that you see young Jack Bracken when everyone's gone inside to get ready to come out and he's still running up and down doing laps, and you think, well, come on, just give him get him on there, because again, it's a bit of speed coming off rather than Cinti. I've got nothing against Luso Cinti, but I don't know what his best position is. I think he's a luxury that we needn't afford.
Luca's problem there is, more than anything else, that perhaps what Jack doesn't offer, is that if you had an injury to Nick Tompkins, or you had an injury to Ollie Hartley, or you had an injury to Noah Glory, or Max Malins, or whoever, any player 12 outside, Cinti can cover that.
I get it.
Particularly if you're going with a forward-heavy bench, you need a player who is more universal. If Elliot Daly was fit, would he be there?
Yeah.
If Alex Lozowski was fit, would he be there? That's perhaps the issue with Luca. But
if we're chasing the game, though,
yeah,
or we need a bit of a spark, as Matt alludes to, what's coming off that's going to ignite you?
It's a balancing act to be had, isn't it? Now, I'm going to move on to Matt now, because Matt did post in our WhatsApp group during the match. He went, has Noah Kalori taken a high ball? Both you and me, Sam, pointed out that he had taken a couple. In particular, one in defence where he came in above about 7 players, I think it was, and plucked one on his fingertips, which was, everybody went, well, how the bloody hell did he do that? It was quite amazing. I do get what you're saying, Matt, because you're going to point out that every high ball he went up for, he dropped, didn't he?
Yes, but I don't think it was his fault. And to be honest, in my message that I did miss the word attack, which is what I meant. Was that catch pretty much under our own posts, saved 7 points. Unbelievable bit of defensive work there. And obviously the try that he scored, which, we need to mention that one because I'm very pleased with myself for calling that set move. Generally, the kicks that he was chasing, a little bit of a combination of factors. I think occasionally he overran it a little bit. Quite a few of them were just a yard or so too far for him. And I think sometimes potentially he went up for the ball when there wasn't a realistic chance of catching it cleanly, when actually the best thing to do would have been to just check his run a little bit and tackle the Leicester player catching it. But that just comes with time and experience, doesn't it? But I did feel occasionally that, as we did a few times earlier on in the season when he played, we were sort of going to the get out of kick it up in the air and hope Noah catches it a little bit too much, especially in the second half when the bench changes were made and their scrum started to dominate ours. he sort of knew that there was a chance that a scrum was going to happen and then result in a penalty and the ball comes straight back the other way. Maybe we should have tried something different. But yeah, there's certainly not a slight on Noah necessarily. But I don't think he had his best game aerial, but wasn't necessarily helped by the situation.
I do also think, though, in that situation, even if he doesn't have his best game or he hasn't got the best service, what that does do is it puts the frighteners up people. And Ollie Hassel-Collins is probably still having nightmares because as much as Noah perhaps didn't get clean ball himself, Ollie Hassel-Collins was under all sorts of pressure just because Noah was in the air and caused him a few problems, particularly in the first half, Sam, where we got some, maybe not first choice joy from it, but we certainly got second prize on a number of occasions, didn't we?
That defensive one, right under our own post, was that not plucked off of the current England starting fullback and the best player in the air in the country, apparently? And he just took it off him like it was, taking it from a baby. And dare I say it, do you think some of them, he overran a couple, the kicks weren't quite right. Do you think it's just those players and their inexperience of playing the conditions of Stonex? It's a very windy stadium a lot of the times. Yeah. It was a perfect day. It was a beautiful day, and it's normally not, is it? And let's be honest, when the wind goes through there, that played a big part in it, and it's just a learning curve.
It might come as well from who's kicking the ball as well, because, no disrespect to Fergus Burke, he is not going to be as accurate as Owen Farrell, who will put it on a sixpence every time. Not only conditions, you've got to work out who's giving you the service. I wasn't overly disappointed with it. The other player to mention in relation to high balls is Max Malins, who last week we sang his praises, quite rightly, Matt, because, we'd been giving him a little bit of criticism, perhaps suggesting he wasn't performing as good as we know he can do. Last couple of weeks, he's been up there as one of the players of the match. And you made the interesting comment. You said, do you think he's been chatting to Alex Good? Because he's beginning to play an awful lot like Alex Good.
Earlier on in the season, we were sort of trying to rediscover the Max Malins that we had before he left us. And he was looking to do that as well. And had, as some other players did, an absolute stinker against Harlequins and another game, which I can't remember. And it looked like his confidence was all gone. But I didn't really see a lot of the Sale game, unfortunately. But yeah, it just seemed to be a completely different player. And like he's sort of recognised that because of the injury that he had, his pace isn't quite there anymore. And he was just sort of running a bit more elusively, as Alex Good did. You couldn't tackle him in a phone box sometimes, Goody, and you just got that impression out of Max this weekend. And yeah, just under the high ball, looked 10 times the player he did at the start of the season. He might get exposed defensively, pace wise, but his positioning was fantastic. His way of getting out of trouble when he had the ball in hand most of the time was fantastic as well. And it was really, really good to see, especially obviously with Elliot Daly being out and us not having lots of options at fullback. It's pretty encouraging for the next few weeks and hopefully next season.
Let's finish off though with what I think everybody would agree is probably the champagne moment of the game. Fergus Burke's banana kick to touch, which was outstanding. Now, Duncan had put on a WhatsApp post that he's quite conservative in his kicking. And I don't know whether it's that he's conservative. I just think it's down to a bit of confidence maybe, Sam, because when a player's confident, they can do things and good things happen because you're confident to give it a go. I also do think that it's probably just one of those moments that, like I remember in about 1987, I hit a 300-yard drive with a freewood. I'll never do that again. not as long as I ever pick up a golf club, we'll never do that.
Was it a windy day, Jez? Was it downhill?
I once hit a straight six back over the bowler's head as well. I mean, that never happens because everything I normally hit with the back goes leg side to a fine leg fielder. Every now and then you have those moments where you do something absolutely perfect. But I think it comes from confidence and clearly practicing. And if you're sat there, as I say, we've mentioned him time and time again, if you're working with Owen Farrell, you can do that almost at will. 99 times out of 100. That's Owen's benefit to this team now, is the fact that he's around. When I was down on Tuesday, see the respect that he gains from all of those lads there. Even senior players like Maratoge and Jamie George, they respect him. And the young players look up to him. and more established players, the good players, learn from him. Fergus has clearly learned this season and has had to be a little bit patient whilst we did pick. And I know Pat didn't like it, but there you go. That's happened now. But he's been patient, and when he's had his opportunity, he's learned from the master. And that kick is just outstanding and fruition of all of what's gone on this season, I think.
It was a ridiculous kick. The part of the world that he comes from, a bit of sun on his back does him the world of good, and he's not playing in cold conditions. But also as well, I wonder if Faz coming back dented his confidence and he went backwards. He didn't see it as a help. He's come back. We're kind of like, you're the man, you're the guy now. The GOAT's come back, if you like, or, the club legend has come back, and it kind of done him the world of good. And maybe now it's, as we've progressed and we are where we are, and we've realised that Faz is getting older and he's only going to get better. The more confidence we show in him, the better he's going to play. He offers you something Faz never could, even in his pomp.
I'm sure Duncan is listening in because he's doing the recording for this and everything like that. But he's hosting the Q&A online, which is happening tonight for the SSA. And Fergus is one of them. So I'm sure Duncan will ask him a few questions relating to that. And also I know he's going to ask him about how he feels about Thomas Williams coming, because Thomas had a great game for Gloucester on the weekend and it's something to look forward to. But obviously we've got lots to look forward to next week. A Women's Six Nations game, and hopefully Duncan will have recorded some highlights from the Q&A, because otherwise it's going to be a fairly short show next week, which is probably just as well, because we've rattled on for almost an hour now, and so I think we're probably best off stopping it there and saying thank you everybody for listening in to this week's Fezcast. Thank you Matt, thank you Sam for your input as ever. It's brilliant. Thank you Duncan for doing the recording, and I'll say ta-ra from the Fezcast, and we'll speak to you next week.
This is the Fezcast.